Hello and welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about the aspect that is my area of research, and I am really keen about visual peer review. And if you looked at the final project for this semester, you will see in step number 4, you will conduct your own peer review, and I will explain in more details what does it entail. So this presentation is about the visual peer review and why is it important and what is the benefit from it. And I want just a quick review of the final project. What is the objective? What you are looking for? An example, a highlight example of students in the class that did that. And I will outline how you're going to conduct your peer review. So let's start with the final project. Um, there's a very clear objective into this project. You need to find a data set that actually talks to you, not to me, to you. It's all about what you are passionate about, and I do not care if you will use Plotly or Tableau or RStudio or even if you use Adobe Illustrator. It's up to you. You are the designer, you are the creative mind. You need to decide what it is. The data set needs to reflect that, which means that something that you have passion on and something that is important. I listed few example of data resources such as data.gov or Tampa government city where you have a data catalog. However, the data in the city of Tampa is not very clear and not very clean, and so I cautious you to be aware of it, but it is really fun to find out about that. So again, in R, we have a lot of data sets that are available. We use them in our example when we learn about ggplot2 or in other packages. So again, I encourage you to look for data sets and what does it entail. The date of the final is the 27th, and you're going to conduct also a peer review in that sense that will allow you to understand what does it entail. So in this case, you're going to apply 3 principles. You have to evaluate your peers based on clear and detailed library or missing labels that is important, the life factor, and the junk chart junk that might appear. So let me go over that, and I'll try to explain why I'm doing it, because I don't want you to go and say, oh, these crazy professors do those crazy things. So let's start. The idea of, we talked about throughout the semester, we experience real application, but also we apply different principles of visualization. Taft is one of the leading scholar in the field, and he came up with a lot of ideas of principles or ideas or principles of visualization, how to make our life more, when we do the work in visualization, that will be more transparent. He talks about comparison, he talks about causality, he talks about multivariant, he talks about the need or the requirements to have a complete integrate words, numbers, images in the diagram in order for it to become more transparent. We need to have documentation, and we have again and again he uses the word content count as a principles. So again, under the first principles, again, the issue of the integrity of the data is important, and why does it show all the data variance, and determine how you're going to apply that and how to implement that in our textbook, in our reading, in Taft principles. It's the repeating word is do not use 3D. It doesn't add anything. It usually cause a confusion from a naked eye, and as a result, it is not recommended. An example of this is this graph that doesn't really tell us what is it means. Same colors, the 3D does not add additional elements to make our point more clear. The second principle that I'm going to focus on is the lie factor, is the idea that we can detect is there a relationship between the size of the effect and the graphical representation that represent before us. And so this is a really interesting idea that it can be measured throughout. Example, in this case, it is from the New York Times in 1985. They did quantity years versus quartiles, and the idea was that they will show us what is in Intel. And again, there is a lie factor here. Why is it a lie factor? It doesn't allow us to see or to feel what the data shows about the fuel economy with regard to the auto sets by the Department of Transportation, and as a result, this is unclear graphic representation. And again, we need to learn from these mistakes in order for us to create better work. The second principle, according to Taft, is called junk, chart junk. And the idea is that please do not add lines or any other something that does not relate to data in order for you to make the point. It doesn't add anything. And again, this idea is that it just makes the graph more busy and we are losing the points that we are trying to aim. And I hope you will take it as it is and try to make it as simple and clean as possible. So again, those are the principles of Taft. I'm sure that you're going to hear about Taft all the time. If you will encounter visualization people, they will talk about them, about him and his contribution. If you go into a job interview, Taft probably will be at the background of the interview. He knows his work, so be aware of it. Another element is the Gestalt principle of visual perception. I talked about that in the beginning of the semester. I told you about it's a movement in psychology, and the idea is that one of the principles is our textbook text that the whole is greater than the sum, and as a result, we need to be aware of it in order for us to design better visualization. And the idea is that the basic concept of grouping different design elements can be applicable and be helpful in order for us to make the idea. And again, they talked that the movement talked about visual organization in order for us to improve our perception of the image itself and what we see behind it. And the idea here is that grouping goodness of the figures and the figure ground relationship help us to make the ideas more clear and more concise. And again, make it shape stand out, the scale stand out, the color stand out in order for you to apply and perceive it more clearly. So again, I outlined those principles in 4 figures, and so I hope that you remember that. I also hope that you go over the book itself and to see what is it entail. Okay. One of the things that I often been asked is example of former students in the visual presentation. And again, this is example, and it is quite massive, and because it has more than 50 variables in it. But again, the idea of colors is well organized and well developed. And again, in that sense, he rated graduation rate. And again, based on the data. So first of all, why peer review is so important? Peer review is not giving the instructor or the professor to review your work, is to give your colleagues the idea of review your work before you submit it. So the idea here is really important, and it shows that in my study, it shows that the more you have peer review, the better the work it is. So how are you going to review your work of your peers? You're going to be asked, is it clear, detailed, and complete labeling used or misleading? Are there lie factor in the work? Is the graphic present a junk that is not related to the visual itself? Is it more efficient without or with the junk? And what is the best work capture with regard to best practices we cover in class? So those are the elements that I want you to be aware. The idea, you will have rubric and you will fill out. And again, I applied in the textbook, in a textbook, few outlined few principles of visual design, and I want you to measure that or to highlight that in that set. That's it. That's all I have to say about the final project and in the class and the peer review practice that you will review your peers in the class. I hope you enjoy it. I hope that you will learn from this experience, not only to listen to your professor, but also to your peers in the class and get feedback in order for you to improve your work. And every comments, every element can help you to make better visualization. So this is not the end of the messages, but this is the last message I have right now. I will come up with the last announcement and ask you to review me before the end of the semester. I hope you enjoyed this semester. I hope you learn new things and learn to look through visualization. And I will see you next time. Until then, have fun. Whew.